Hi, we are going to start constructing a research evaluation or evidence table. This table is in your Canvas. This is what you're supposed to use for 6110, and we're going to talk about filling in each of these components, but we are going to move through some of them very quickly and for the essence of time. Okay, so what I did is I chose this article right here, and here's the title, here's the authors, and this is the year that it was published, which is this year. And here is the abstract. It takes about 3 to 4 times, I'm not kidding, to read an article to truly understand it and to get the information that we are asking you for. Okay, so the abstract goes through the purpose, it goes through the methods, results, and the conclusions. All right. So I want to quickly, the purpose right here. I always highlight my information because when I save these into a folder on my desktop, I have that information highlighted so I can always go back and find it very quickly when I'm beginning to write my literature review. Okay, so here's the purpose. This is something that I would cut and paste and put it right into the evidence table. Okay, and I'm going to show you. I actually already filled out the table as you saw, so we'll do that in a minute. So here's your methods. It's a descriptive cross-sectional study design. Cross-sectional right off the bat tells me this is a quantitative study. That means a snapshot in time. Descriptive means it's a non-experimental study. Here's the N, 225. Oh, and here are the instruments. Two instruments were used to measure the variables. Here's the results. It talks about significant correlation, so I know that somewhere I will be looking for a p of less than 0.05. And then the conclusions. The key when I read through this, it told me about the lack of statistical significance between beliefs and support strategies and personal characteristics. So this is one aspect of the study. Points to clinical implications in that diabetes educators are well aligned in the care of persons of diabetes. Right there is a clinical significance statement. So you're going to want to highlight that and utilize that. Okay. So in an article, this is the literature review or the background it goes through, gives you an idea. Your literature review, of course, will be much longer. But the cool thing in this section is that the purpose of the study is always delineated out a bit more specifically. And when I read through this, I noticed that there was an overarching purpose of the study, but there were 2 other sub-purposes. So I knew that there were going to be 3 research questions asked. And as a matter of fact, what's really nice about this is the research questions were specifically laid out. I highlighted these as well, and I actually cut and paste and brought these over. Okay, let me go a little bit down here, just a bit further, and then we're going to go back to the table. When you get to the methods section, the research design should be laid out a bit more specifically, and here it does talk about the quantitative, cross-sectional, descriptive, correlational study. Quantitative is probably kind of a redundant word, because we already know cross-sectional refers to that, and correlational also refers to that. That means they use correlational statistics, such as Pearson's R. Okay, here's the recruitment and the sample population. What I want to say about this section very quickly is that it tells you your inclusion criteria right here, and it tells you your exclusion criteria, which is always nice to know. Interesting with this study is it utilized many disciplines, and they had to have the certification in diabetes care, CDEs, or they were board certified through through the AADE, the American Association of Diabetes Educators. So this wasn't just a broad category of diabetes educators everywhere, people who may call themselves that, but they don't have specific training. These are people that were actually certified or educated through this program, which is a big one nationwide. But here is the setting. The setting is AAD accredited outpatient diabetes education programs. Okay, so the sample population was these diabetes educators, and the study setting was this. All right, so let's go back to the table. Cut and paste the authors, just first name, date, and then the title. The purpose of the problem, I told you that I cut and pasted that right from the abstract, but then I cleaned it up. You don't need all those words. Cut these words out. You do not want this table to be long. It just needs to be succinct, and you have the salient points in here. You highlight those, like I highlight certain statements in your article, so you can go back and pull them out very quickly when you write your literature review. The design and the method. We know this is a quantitative, cross-sectional, descriptive, correlational study. I cut and pasted that. Sample size and study, and we knew that this was an N225 from the abstract, and it's also mentioned in the article. And as I mentioned, this is your study setting, your AAD accredited outpatient diabetes education programs, okay? And these are people across the nation, so that's nice. Power analysis I did talk about in a previous video. It is mentioned, and I'll show you where, that they conducted a power analysis was conducted, and 92 participants were needed based off of the design of the study and the questions asked, okay? And they had 225, so that's very important. That's valid. That's a good thing. The major variables, I'm going to show you where those are. I cut and pasted these right from the article because they laid them out. Sometimes you have to figure that out for yourself, okay? The measurement of the variables, again, that was in the abstract. There was a CS-PAM, and then there was an SMS scale. And I mentioned reliability analysis earlier, or in another video. It has to be greater than 0.7, and this should be mentioned when people discuss the instrument utilized. So as you can see, both of these came in greater than 0.07, so that really helps with validity and reliability of the instrument, but also overall for the study. And then we'll go into data analysis. Okay. So quickly, cut and pasted those questions. We already went over this. This is the variables of interest. These were the three variables: beliefs about self-management support strategies used, and then the personal characteristics. So I just cut and pasted that. Again, I cleaned it up a little to shorten it up. I didn't shorten it too much because I wanted to be able to say, oh yeah, what does that mean? This talks about the scales right here. The CS-PAM, valid and reliable. The Cronbach's Alpha, the SMS, and then the reliability for that. Okay, statistical analysis. This is the next column. And right here, when you read through here, they mention all the tests that were used. Okay, so they talked about each question, the relationship for question 1. They used all these: independent samples t-test, ANOVA, one-way ANOVA, and Pearson's correlation. So I cut and pasted those. And then as I scrolled on down, I saw multiple linear regression was also used. So I cut and pasted that. What I want to mention here before we go back to the table is that here is about your power analysis. They used 5 predictors, and it showed that 92 participants were needed, and 225 was what they got, which was perfect. Okay. The other thing that's really nice about this predictor, remember when predictor variables, that also means independent variables. So actually, if you wanted to go ahead in your table and state specifically what the IVs were and what the DVs were, they're all listed here, okay? So we'll go back to that. We're going right into the results next. Okay, so here's what I did. I cut and pasted what tests they used. Those were all of them. Now, here's what I want to do, and we're only going to go through one question at a time. We're going to look at or one question in this study just for time. So the relationship between the educator's beliefs towards the patient as a self-manager of their chronic illness and the support strategies used, this is the question that we're going to look at. And so I color-coded it like I mentioned, and these were the results for that, okay? This has to tie, your purpose has to tie to your data analyses. Otherwise, it makes no sense. So if I had this question and I'm using these results, that doesn't make any sense at all. So that's why I color code things. Okay, so let's look at this. Boom. All right. So this is nice because there are the 3 questions listed above, but this article actually breaks out each question and gives you the results for each question. So we know that this was Pearson's correlation was used, and we know that also because we see the R, that's Pearson's correlation. Okay, so the results for this first question, the relationship between educators' beliefs and self-management strategies used, they used both scales, the CS-PAM and then the SMS, okay, right there. And what it showed was that there was a significant result, okay? So CS-PAM scores are positively associated with higher SMS scores at a statistically significant level, R223 equals 0.27. There's your R2 right there, and then your p-value, which was less than 0.05. So cut and paste that part over there and you put that in the table. Also, Remember when we talked about earlier size effect, which is also can be related or called magnitude? They talk about that. This is very important to put in there. And this result was small to moderate, which you can tell because it was 0.27. Small is 0.2. It depends on what QAUN's D. I'm not going to go into this, but anyways, this actually does result back into a small to moderate effect. And so we would want to address that as well. So let me go right on over here. So for the first question, that relationship between the beliefs and then the strategies utilized using both of the instruments mentioned, the results showed a significant correlation, and it showed a small to moderate effect size. So make sure you get that in there. I'm not going to go through the rest of the questions. Major themes, this is primarily for qualitative studies because those are the results. So when you are well, we're going to go over that. So you can think about maybe major themes. That's really your questions or your purposes for a study. But right here for just time, and not only time, but I don't want to write everything out again. I just wrote go back to the research questions. Those are all the tech quote unquote maybe themes, but it's what they were really looking at. And so I'm not going to repeat that over here. Now let's look at appraisal of worth and the strength and the quality of the evidence, the strength and quality of evidence, right? And then clinical significance. The appraisal of worth, what were the strengths? I'm going to tell you right now, this was participants across the nation, and it was an adequate sample size, okay? And it used many different disciplines, which was nice. The lengths, the limitations of any study, if they are self-reporting, that's always a limitation. And the other thing that this had was, a larger sample could be utilized if you could get more than 225. That would be reflective more of the total population, and that's mentioned. But another thing, and I didn't put it in here, a bias is that self-management support is a big term utilized throughout healthcare right now, and it's what clinicians are to be working towards. So when you think about it, if we hope that everybody answers honestly, but somebody may not because they don't want they want to show that they actually support this concept, which is really self-management support meaning, which is really interesting because really when you review the literature, people are honest and say they don't necessarily, but that is a bias, and I would write that in there. We just don't have time. Okay, so when we go to the strength and the quality, this is a table, the Johns Hopkins evidence-based table that you will utilize. This actually came out as a number 3 because it's a non-experimental study, but it came out as an A because it met all the criteria for a high-level study. Okay, clinical significance. This was applicability to the clinical question and professional practice. This actually was, again, one of the questions asked towards the end when they were, I don't want to go through the article, but when they were looking at the personal characteristics of diabetes educators in regards to their education or to their beliefs and the support strategies used, the multiple linear regression model demonstrated there were no statistical significance. So this showed that no matter what their characteristics, including discipline, they all believed and basically treated the patients the same. That's very important, because we want to make sure that pharmacists are doing the same thing as nurses. The public health people out there that are certified as diabetes educators are doing the same thing as the other disciplines. So this is very important. This is also very important for when educators are being hired into clinics and everything, that they're able to show, hey, it doesn't matter what discipline I'm from. I'm trained the same, and my output is the same. So very important. The other cool thing about this is that the diabetes educators came in at a 77.7, the highest score in the literature for CSPAM score, and this scale is actually utilized internationally, and it's all over the literature. So that was kind of nice. These educators are doing a great job. So this information, which I don't have much time to go over, is found in the discussion. Here's the score. Here is that it's very high. There are limitations that are discussed that I already mentioned and I put in the table. There's your clinical significance. This is something that a larger sample needs to be utilized. So implications, that's more in future studies. Okay, so that was quick and dirty. Thanks, and if you have any questions, ask your instructors.